You are listening to the Jboy Show, your number one source for Auburn and the SEC.
My goal was to run through his soul and grab his heart when I run through his soul.
Kurt, Nate, Coach Staff, those are memories.
I think we've established ourselves as, I think, the premier conference in college football.
Now, the SEC is better at the top. It's better in the middle.
The Southeastern Conference remains the premier conference.
Takes the snap. Looking for the receiver. He's got Lutz and Kirkland. Touchdown, Auburn!
Think about it. It's always been the SEC and everybody else trying to catch it.
I think this is probably the best league from a competitive venue standpoint.
The most capable teams. You just look at those programs, the way they recruit, how they invest.
Snap to Burrow. 3 steps. Fires. Back corner of the end zone. Over the shoulder catch. Did he hold on? He did. Justin Jefferson. Touchdown, Tiger.
And now, your host, Jboy.
Hello, Jboy fan base and faithful. We have another recruiting roundup, jam-packed, log-jammed, whatever you want to call it. Our normal Wednesday deal here with, in my opinion, one of the best in the business, at Dukes the Scoops on Twitter. And he's known around here as Phillip Dukes. Dukesy, what is up, brother?
Hey, what's going on, man? A beautiful day here in Atlanta. Just glad to be back on the show.
Hey, definitely glad to have you here, man. Obviously, the fans and the viewers of the show, this is one of the most popular episodes for a reason. And let's jump right into it. And there was some news on a guy that we've been talking about a lot, Dukes, a guy that obviously Auburn's really high on, you're really high on, I'm really high on, and that's Xavian Sorey. And it came out recently that he's transferring to IMG. What do you know behind that situation, and how does that affect Auburn's recruitment of him?
So there was a lot to be made about Sorey transferring to IMG, but I think that is, and from what I hear from some of the members of the staff and people around with knowledge of the situation, on his side too, that it's the best move that he can make for him. So if you go back and you look at his tape at Graceville, he's doing absolutely everything. He's playing running back, fullback, tight end, tackle, defensive end, linebacker, safety, cornerback, and he's returning punts. So you name it, he's doing it. I think it's going to be really good for his tape and his evaluation and his development for him to move to a school that has so much talent that he'll be able to focus on one position. Is he an inside backer? Is he an outside backer? We'll be able to determine more so that this year with the move to IMG. I think there was a lot to be made out about him going to IMG based on the fact that Auburn hasn't really pulled anybody from IMG. But I think this year is so different. It lines up with 2020 perfectly with being one of those kind of abstract years because IMG already has multiple commits that are going to Florida. And I think there's been a lot documented in the past about Florida not being able to get recruits out of IMG. And I think if there's anything to worry about with IMG, it's not going to be the staff. The second in command there is an Auburn guy. It's not going to be the relationships as Cadillac, our running backs coach, did come from IMG prior to getting the job at Auburn. The biggest thing is going to be the amount of recruits going to other schools that are at IMG. IMG has one of those weird schedules. I think they play maybe 2 or 3 Saturday games, which kind of restricts some of the scouts from getting down there. People who are really helping with the recruitment efforts of Auburn, being able to see them in person and see them live. So I think the most important thing right now is for Sorey, and from what I hear, he would love to get back on campus, as most of the recruits who have committed or who have increased their communication with Auburn during the pandemic. Everybody knows that the biggest draw that Auburn has is not going to be the brand. It's not going to be the type of equipment they have. It's not going to be Under Armour. It's going to be Auburn and the family atmosphere that you get when you come to the Plains. And Sorey's heard about it. He wants to see how he vibes with the other players. He has been in contact with other linebackers. He has been in contact with guys from his area in Florida that are on the Auburn team. Good communication so far. If I was to say right now where Auburn stands in his recruitment, I would say maybe 2B with right now, surprisingly enough, I'm hearing that UGA is number 1 with Sorey.
Wow.
Yeah, so that came out of nowhere. I think that the linebackers coach there has been doing a great job. 2A would be Florida. Right now, I would see Florida. And 2B, would be Auburn. I believe that his area recruiter, Pogue, and his linebackers coach would be his positional coach. Linebackers would be T. Will, who's the cream of the crop in the SEC. So I think just their efforts they've been doing a bang up job of making themselves a real player. And I haven't been hearing a whole lot about Alabama lately, but I mean, you'd be a fool to just say that Alabama, as of today, is not a player for him.
Yeah.
But I think that Auburn is a stronger player for Sorey than a lot of people know. But I felt like if everybody had to commit today, I feel like Sorey would be a Georgia Bulldog.
Wow. And that's great information, Dukes. I appreciate that. Now, so you think obviously the visits are going to be huge for Sorey. So, I mean, do you think it's a situation where he's the type kid, and you know what type kid he is, where, you know, he can come up on a visit to Auburn and just fall in love with it and Auburn take the lead and then kind of decide to shut it down? Or do you think this is one where he's going to fall in love on every visit he goes and it's going to be a war till the end?
I feel like a little bit of both. I feel like once he falls in love with a different school, they may take a lead. But he's such a calculated guy, and the moves that he makes, and he's already made as far as his basketball career. Also, just as far as even making the transfer to IMG, I think that he has a very good understanding of where he wants to go, where his career needs to go, and the type of atmosphere he would like to thrive in, and where he would like to be developed. So with him having so much forethought into his recruitment, because a lot of times you see parents, and he has both parents in his life, and a lot of times you see the parents be kind of run the show. Sorey is running this show himself. Mm-hmm. I can speak to that from different schools that have spoken with him. Sorey's running his own recruitment. And he's the type of guy who he's going to make the best decision for him, and he's not going to be on anybody's timeline but himself, but his own. Yeah, should I say so? Yeah, I definitely think that. I think that Auburn is doing a good job of staying in it with guys, while we can't use our number one asset, which is the Auburn atmosphere. But until then, I think that just staying in the top 3, the top 2 with guys before they make a commitment is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's almost, once these visits start, it's like the gates open again, and there'll be so much movement. And obviously, you know this, I think we're going to see a ton of decommitments here soon once kids start taking visits, and really coaches can kind of evaluate a little bit more, even though there's, the summer's running out pretty quickly. But I want to move on because Sorey's the guy that we're going to continue to monitor and talk about. But there's been kind of a development in two offensive linemen that happen to be twins. And I know you know a lot on the situation, and that's with the Brockermeyer twins, and they've got everybody. What are you hearing on that? And do you think they're going to go to the same school?
Yeah, so Auburn actually has been taking an approach that a lot of schools haven't been, and that's to be confident that and be content to only get one of the two. So a lot of people are saying, okay, they're going to be a package deal, which I do believe that they are going to go to the same school. But Jack Bicknell has not been scared one bit by that. He does have a better relationship with James Brockermeyer, who is the number 1 center in the country, more so than Tommy Brockermeyer, who is the behemoth offensive tackle. Mm. And I think that, let's say a miracle did happen and they did go to separate schools, I could see potentially the tackle going to Bama, and I could see the center coming to Auburn, which would be phenomenal for us, because if you look at our offensive line class, we've got tackles. We've got a guy who can go from guard and tackle with Langlow. So we got Gooch, who's a behemoth himself. Yeah. So I think that having a number 1 rated center would be huge. Now, I'm not saying that will happen. What I am saying that Auburn is in constant contact, consistent contact with James Brockermeyer, and not so much as Tommy Brockermeyer.
Okay. Now, is that one, do you know, and again, you're not in the family home, Dukes, I know I'm probably asking too much of you, but between both the brothers, does one of them have a little more pull than the other, or do you think it's actually even, it's actually 50-50 and they're both going to make their own decision? Or is the one brother going to be like, listen, man, we just got to play together, I don't care, where are you going?
I think that the fact that they, I think that if it came down to it, the fact that they already aren't committed to Texas says a lot. So the fact that they are even considered to be an Alabama lean as a package, knowing that their father was an All-American at Texas, lets me know that they're going to make their own choice. So I know they would like to play together in college, but if it ever came down, I don't think Big Nail is chasing up a tree for no reason. I think that he's making sure that he stays in contact, Even if he hasn't been talking to Tommy as much as he's been talking to James, I think that if he was able to get James to come to Auburn, it's not going to be like, okay, that's not a consolation prize. He is the prize. And I think that he will look amazing in Auburn blue and orange.
Yeah, and again, that would be a huge haul for Auburn and would just add another huge feather in the cap of what's already shaping up to be not only a huge offensive line class, ratings-wise, but also size-wise. And we've kind of talked about that philosophy change and how we agree with it. And moving away from the offensive line here, Dukes, there's a guy that committed to Clemson a while ago that Auburn was a player for, and of course, that's Barrett Carter, the high-rated linebacker. And, there's some smoke at Clemson. And, there's been some talk a little bit that Barrett may be looking around a little bit, and Auburn finished second in that recruitment. Do you see Auburn maybe trying to sneak their way back in this one?
Isn't going anywhere. They're definitely going to continue to recruit Barrett. Barrett has been very intentional with his contact with Auburn, and what I mean by that is that he's happy where he is. I think that he really wanted to go to Clemson, and I think that in his dream scenario, his position coach would be T. Will, if I just had to say it. But T. Will is at Auburn. So I think that he's keeping that door open just in case, hey, let's say something else comes out at Clemson, some big bombshell gets dropped. It could be similar to the situation last year where there may be a higher rated linebacker that Clemson decides they want, and then they may create a space there that say, okay, well, he may not want to compete. Well, just in case. He knows that he's very high on Auburn's board, and he already has a great relationship with T. Will. So I think he's been very intentional with his contact with Auburn, just to be sure that he's making the right decision and to have a fallback plan. So it's nothing that I would say he would be on a decommitment alert or anything.
Okay.
But I will say that I can speak to the fact that he has been in contact with Auburn very consistently, and that relationship is still strong. So one thing I will say is you can never count those type of relationships out.
Exactly. And if you just look right now, number one, Auburn's loaded at linebacker already on the team this season. But if you look at the guys that they're recruiting, and, we've talked about Smallmund a bunch, we've talked about Sorey a bunch, and now Barrett Carter. I mean, they're really going after the top tier elite guys. And another feather in Auburn's cap this year that I think people need to realize is KJ Britt's going to go really high in that draft. And, there's multiple guys on the team right now that I think are going to get drafted at linebacker. There's a few young guys eventually that are going to get drafted. But can you kind of talk about how much of a boost that's going to give just throughout the season when, KJ Britt's first team all SEC, at backer and T. Will being able to say, here we go. This is one of the trailblazers.
Yeah, so definitely I think KJ Britt has been the prototype linebacker that T. Will wants to put on the field. He has the size, but he also has that blue collar work ethic that you want to see out of a middle linebacker. A no nonsense type of guy, locker room leader, and I think that's going to go a long way to seeing that you can do it the Auburn way, which is to come in, be developed, play special teams, wait your turn, and then ball when you get your shot. You got to think. Last year, KJ Britt was not last year. The year before last, KJ Britt was behind Deshaun Davis.
Yep.
Do I think that KJ Britt was talented enough to play more as a sophomore? You're damn right. But he waited his turn, and he did it the Auburn way, and I think that goes a long way towards recruiting guys who may come in with those lofty star rankings, and that maybe hearing other places that I can come in, I can start today, or I can start second week, I'll be starting the red shirt. Now the standard is being set, and when you come to Auburn, unless you're a freakishly, outlandishly talented guy, you're probably going to, if you do play your freshman year, you're going to be playing special teams. Mm-hmm. We really only play two linebackers. So right now, the rotation that's going on, you got to think about it. You got KJ Britt, Owen Papo, Chandler Wooten, Jacoby McClain. Who do you play over? Right now, do I feel like there's any linebacker in high school right now that can come in and play, give us significant snaps right now over any of those guys? And I would have to say no.
Yeah.
And I think that the honesty that Auburn is putting out there and the product that we're putting out from the linebacker position, the productivity that's going out there, it speaks for itself. So I think that the narrative is changing when it comes to the linebacker room at Auburn, and a lot of guys are having to consider, like, man, you know what? I may not start my freshman year at Auburn, but I'd be damned if I do what I have to do and I listen and I go and I get developed, I'll be all SEC by the time I leave. I think that's going to go a long way.
Exactly. And you can see, T. Will and Coach Steele and Coach Malzahn really establishing that process. And that's what it takes. In recruiting, these kids watch the guys who came before him and how it was handled and how they ended up. And that's something that will always be a factor in recruiting. And obviously you want that to be a positive for your program. But kind of moving on a little bit, I want to go up to Maryland again. We had Malcolm Johnson Jr. on the show, the 4-star wide receiver. That was great. There's another guy from St. Francis Academy, Jamon Dumas Johnson. He's a 4-star outside linebacker, 6'1", 235, class of 2021, and it says he's committing on July 8th. Well, what do you have on him?
So I think that Dumas Johnson is a big kid that can run. His tape looks really good. The competition level was something that Auburn was concerned about, but not really concerned as far as not taking him. But when you put his film up against some of the guys who may be a little bit more highly rated, then it doesn't look as if he's one of those guys that you would take over certain guys in that class. And I think with the linebacker position being so loaded, I don't think that we're able to take more than one, possibly two linebackers in this class, especially with the amount of talent that's coming in the 2022 class. So I think that this will be a classic case of Auburn really just trying to keep everything close to the best when it comes to the targets that they really want. Not to say that they did not or do not want Dumas Johnson, but I do feel that Dumas Johnson wanted to see a little bit more from Auburn early on. Auburn has turned up the intensity, but Auburn really is thinking about who's the best fit for the program, not just as far as who's the best fit as far as playing, but who's the type of guy that's going to fit well in a locker room, who's going to be an Auburn guy through and through. And not to say that Dumas Johnson isn't, but without having a visit or being able to get some of the information that they've been able to get on these other guys that they're recruiting, it's not about the talent. It's more so about the process, why there hasn't been more of an intensified effort to get Dumas Johnson into the fold for this class. And with that being said, even with, I would say, Auburn leaving a little bit on the table as his recruitment goes, they're still in the top 5. So I would say this is a recruitment that, depending on how his year goes, he could become more highly ranked, or he could show more. He could flash more on film that shows that he may be the type of linebacker that Auburn is more closely related to, and Auburn really is more familiar with. So this is a recruitment that I would probably watch to the end, because let's say he commits to Maryland. If it becomes an Auburn-Maryland type deal, I would like Auburn's chances if they put the full court press on that he said that he wanted early on.
Definitely. And something, too, with a guy like that, and you brought it up, just looking at Auburn's roster, they can be a little picky with these guys and can make sure that the fit is right. Like you said, they'll come into the locker room and won't be a distraction, and they'll add to it. And I know we're kind of picking on Clemson a little bit today, Dukes, but there's another Clemson commit at a very interesting position, because obviously you've there's been some smoke about LSU and current Auburn commit Armani Goodwin, but you look at a guy, Phil Maffa, who's committed to Clemson at running back right now, I believe. And do you have any news on that?
So I think in the same fashion that LSU is continuing to communicate with Armani Goodwin, and Armani Goodwin is speaking back to LSU. I think that Auburn is doing the same thing with Phil Maffa. Auburn is very interested in Phil Maffa. He was high on the board. He committed so early on. He's a 2019 commit for a 2021 graduation.
Wow.
So at a very, very early in the process. Auburn's doing their due diligence. He's one of the more highly ranked guys on the board. If it came down to it, I felt like if he said he wanted to commit today, he would definitely be a take. And they would take him and Armani Goodwin. So Auburn is in a great position with the running. Same thing with the linebackers. The running back room is so full right now that they can afford to take one running back. If it came, let's say Armani Goodwin flipped and Phil Maffa was the guy, Auburn would be very happy. So it's something I would just say to continue to monitor. Just another guy that we're interested in. I think there are other schools continuing also to recruit Maffa. I think Georgia's one of those schools. I would also say South Carolina has also put in some good vibes as far as trying to make sure that he knows that he's wanted, even though he's already committed. But yeah, I think something just to monitor. So when I hear things, I try to put out as much as I can without jeopardizing any of the integrity of the recruitment efforts. But that is something I was green lighted to say. So yeah, definitely one to watch later on. He's been committed for so long, it seems like a foregone conclusion, almost kind of like Goodwin. But I think that just like what Goodwin is, where there's smoke, there's fire. So I would pay attention to some of the efforts that you see Auburn putting in on that front.
Definitely. And just for our audience, you're not going to get this info anywhere else. I mean, again, you're getting it straight from the source. And Dukes, you do a great job of balancing. And I have to do this too. And other guys, other guys that we talk to have to do it as well, of being able to balance that source and be able to get information that you want people to know without burning the source and therefore losing your information. So I really appreciate you going into depth on Maffa. He's one that we're definitely going to continue to monitor, and Auburn fans need to know that name. But kind of getting ready to close out here. Dukes, only a couple more I want to throw at you. There's a kid that I know you're really high on, and I watched this tape, and I'm right there with you, and Auburn's in a good spot for a lot of good DBs. But can you kind of talk about Nate Wiggins a little bit? Because he's a guy that Auburn fans need to go watch the tape, and they need to know who he is.
Yeah, so Nathaniel Wiggins out of Westlake High School in Atlanta is a long-rangey cornerback. Kind of reminds some of a Nyland Green type deal. I think that Auburn wanted to get some more information on him. Really good kid, comes from a great family, very athletic. I think he's played at Grady and transferred to Westlake. Is familiar with Smoke Monday, Smoke Monday, as he was a member of the Grady team. I think maybe 3 years ago now. So from the same area, guy who was very heavily praised as far as him being a little league guy. You know, like in Atlanta, we don't do Pop Warner, but our little league circuit is full of future athletes and NFL players. So those guys start to get monitored while they're almost in the 5th or the 6th grade. He's always been at the top of the class when it came to being one of those more highly rated guys. Watching this film, just seeing the amount of talent that he's going to be playing with at Westlake this year, you're going to be able to see how he stands out from the competition. And as far as the competition, his recruitment goes with his own school. On the other side, he has A.J. Terrell's little brother, Avion, who's a 2020 recruit. And the slot guys, the Marcus Brown, I believe, who's going to Ole Miss. So just that amount of D1 talent on the same roster is very intriguing. I think that Auburn did have some more information they wanted to see after he camped at Auburn before they put on a full court press. Right now, he's a heavy lean towards University of Southern California. From what I hear, they have he's very interested in their shoe design program, and that's something that Auburn has caught wind of, and they are making efforts to see if they could get into the recruitment a little bit later than they would have liked to. Mm-hmm. The pandemic has really it's making Auburn think outside of the box at this point. They're saying, okay, well, we've got our process. We know we need this information before we go ahead and put the recruitment into full gear where we would like it to be at for a guy at this level. But they stuck to their guns, they stuck to the process, and they said, okay, until we can answer these certain questions on our evaluation, is he above the line or is he under the line? I would say that Wiggins was always above the line, but there were some the guys that they did have possibly higher rated. But now once they reevaluated the tape, he's become one of those guys that they're looking at as a priority. It's just so late in the game, and the pandemic has thrown everything off. And we're in it with so many cornerbacks that are so talented. It's almost like you can't get them all.
Yeah.
And I think that's one that I would monitor just based on the fact that he's somebody that we should be watching out of this region. And that if Auburn were to miss on a couple of guys, and when I say miss, it may not. And there are guys that you may see on the boards that Auburn is very high on that may not be ranked higher than this guy. Mm. There are some 3-star guys that Auburn may see how they fit. So when you think about having a field corner and a boundary corner, you're not going to recruit 2 or 3 or 4 the same type guy. So you try to take the best guy based on position, not based on rankings that come from the recruiting side, if that makes sense. And Auburn's doing a very, very good job of sticking to their board and recruiting based on need and fit and not just talent. So I think that he's definitely a kid that they say is 1,000% talented, hell of a football player. He trains with former Clemson cornerback Justin Miller, one of the Lab Bros. If you ever search that hashtag, you'll see a ton of talent from Atlanta. And definitely a kid that I'm high on, and I hope that it works out for Auburn. If it doesn't, I understand why it didn't based on the process, but he's definitely a kid I'm high on, and I could see him being more highly ranked as the season progresses.
Definitely. And again, for our viewers out there and anybody, if you want to know how good a kid is, go look at his offer list. Stars are great. And the guys that do evaluations, they do a good job. But you know as well as I do, you look at Caleb Johnson right now, an Auburn commit, a 3-star, unless it changed and I didn't see it. He's got 37 offers, including Auburn, Alabama, Notre Dame, Florida. You know, if he's a 3-star, then show me what a 4-star is. But that's a discussion for another day. But there's a little thing we're going to add in here, and I thought this was a great idea, Dukes, and it really lets kind of people know about maybe a sleeper recruit out there that we're always going to bring up in the end. And there's a guy out of Palm Bay, Florida, a 4-star, so he's a highly ranked guy, but I'm not sure if Auburn fans really know about him. Chase Smith. Can you kind of talk about Chase? And I know he plays multiple positions, and I know Miami's there a little bit. Kind of where is he?
So Chase Smith is a heavy Miami lean, 6'3", 190 pounds, very wiry, strong type of guy. Auburn really likes him. His area recruiter is the wide receivers coach, Cody Burns. Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing is Auburn really sees him as a linebacker. And I think that he's very adamant about playing wide receiver at this point when it comes to Auburn. I'm not saying he's not willing to do that for another school, but where Auburn sees him at, that's kind of been the disconnect, is that Auburn really wants him at linebacker. From watching this tape, I see linebacker, or he could even be a big box safety. Mm-hmm. But the guy is fun to watch. Auburn is really high on him. But like you said, it has to be a fit, and there's no reason. And what I do love about the way Auburn is recruiting this year, and they've been doing this in the past as well, is they're running a pretty clean campaign as far as, hey, look, this is where we see you. And if you don't see yourself there, this is our plan for you. But we're not going to bring you in and tell you, hey, we want you to play wide receiver when we really see you as a linebacker. Mm-hmm. So if there's a natural move that, hey, we gave you a chance at wide receiver and it didn't work out, let's try you at corner. Or it's not working now, or the depth at this position would require for us to move you to a different position, that's different. But we know that there are schools that may see you in a certain position and they'll tell you anything they can to get you there. And Auburn is not subscribing to that this year, and they haven't been in previous years. And I think that's been a big difference in some of the recruiting misses, quote unquote, we would say. But if you've got a guy that's coming in thinking he's intentionally being recruited to play one position, and the whole time he's really been groomed for another position, is that really a miss? Or is that somebody being, or is that someone being disingenuous when it comes to how they really want you, and then creating a possible locker room issue later on? So Chase Smith is a guy whose tape I really enjoy watching. If you guys get a chance, check him out. 6'3", 190. He's pretty good wide receiver, but I think he's a damn good linebacker.
Yeah. And again, that's a guy you talked about it. I mean, it's something where the fit has to be right. And when you're at a place like Auburn and you recruit at the level Auburn does, it gets to the point where the fit's huge. You can't just go out there and say, hey, we're just going to try and sign all the best players, and half of them, you promise the world and can't deliver like you brought up. Then the locker room becomes a disaster and the leaders can't lead. So Dukes, man, it's always 5-star stuff from you, man. Speaking of stars, again, dude, obviously we appreciate you here, and you do a great job, man. And everybody needs to go follow at Dukes the Scoop if you haven't. One of the top recruiting guys in the game, a huge friend of the Jboy Show, and we're a huge friend of what he's doing. Dukes, tell everybody, I know I drop your Twitter handle all the time, but tell everybody where they can find you so they can stop screwing up if they aren't.
And just check me out on Twitter at Dukes, DUKESVTHE Scoop. That's it, man. Come check me out. We do polls every day. We have a whole lot of Auburn-inspired trivia questions, and we just have a good time on Twitter and try to get through the pandemic together.
Hey, definitely, man. Well, I appreciate you, Dukes, and we'll talk soon as usual, man. Keep doing your thing. We'll keep doing ours, and I love the collab.
All right, sure, man. We'll talk.
All right, Dukes. See you, buddy. And that was Phillip Dukes from Dukes the Scoop. Again, just giving you guys all the inside info for free. Again, that's the guy you got to go follow on Twitter. But just want to thank all you guys again. That's the recruiting roundup for this Wednesday. Y'all make this show go. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the Jboy Show. Shout out Faison, Harry Potter in the studio, and always the Investor Brand Network, the best place for PR and marketing. You guys are the best audience ever. We appreciate you. We're going to keep growing, keep doing these predictions, and keep making announcements. This has been another recruiting edition of the Jboy Show, and Jboy's going. He's gone.